So that's what happens with the Web 2.0 websites. JavaScript loads additional content onto the page. This is the typical website which we build these days, which is little advanced. So let's say built on a JavaScript. So I will talk some of the libraries which we all use. So JavaScript loads additional content onto the page, and these are variety of the frameworks. So we use Ajax. Angular is a very popular framework. So these are some of the framework which we are using, and while using these, some of these framework we faces challenges because most of these are JavaScript. So I'll just share some of those examples with you. Okay, if so, this is something. So how many people you understand AngularJS? Not many. So I would run through this because I thought that most of you would be technical enough. So maybe building on AngularJS, it's a very popular way. So when you build a page, it does everything loads from a backend. So it's just a couple of lines of JavaScript code. So the pain with the AngularJS or any of this is that if you do a view source, there is actually no content on the page. So it's all coming from a Java. There's just a couple of lines of a JavaScript, and that becomes a problem which is about. So I'm going to talk about there are some things we could use with there is a service called pre-render. If you can use that and you can have a JavaScript, I'll show some of the what happens with an AngularJS next, so you would understand that most of the websites these are built. So then there is another one which is React.js, which is another way. So most of the JS sites are either built by AngularJS or React.js. Both of them has a way how, and the Googlebot last year came with a methodology how you can have your website crawl better with it. So what you can do with it, let's see. I'm just going to, so these are some of the examples. So for example, dynamic content. So this content, when it loads on this page, this is how it's called dynamic. So let's say another example of the page, which you will see. Only 69 lines of code. So if you go back and see, it's a huge page, it goes down and it's a long page. You have tabs like overview, features, labels. But when I do a view source code, it's just 69 lines. No content in the source code. That's what is AngularJS is about. It helps load faster with us, faster websites. But problem with this, the search engine when it comes to your website will not find any content on it and is not going to rank. That's the challenge which Web 3.0 has currently. I'll share some more examples with you. This is infinite scrolling. Pinterest, it keeps on scrolling. These are how we build e-commerce web pages. Everybody wants like to have one page. Flipkart has it. So where you continue having the page load. Almost all e-commerce site has this infinite scrolling, which is there. Pinterest I'm just taking as an example. So just to give you an example. So if you see Pinterest, it has an unlimited number of scrolls. You continue scrolling it up, but if you go into the source code, only first 24 pins are visible. That's built on AngularJS. So that's something which is a challenge again. This is single page application which is called as SPA. So it's like a one page. You keep on clicking the page, the URL of the page won't change. So it remains same. That's called as an SPA, which is a single page application. So whatever you do here, the page will remain same. And I'll share some of this. So it updates the page without a refresh. You want real price, compare, moving, storage, whatever. And how does Robert view these pages? Let's see. For example, if we go to a page, this is what John Muller, who is a Google web trend analyst and now moved to Google spam team also. So he says, and I'll read it for you. We try to act like a browser, execute the JavaScript as much as possible and index the page based on that, making it possible for a lot of these JavaScript framework to essentially work by default without having to do anything. And he says, I think at the moment we are not quite there, where I would say you could do whatever you want in JavaScript and Google will figure it out. So that's what Google says, that they are not quite there. That's the highlight point here. So some of these pages, Google says they can crawl, but there are issues which we're going to see. So, but Google can't root. So there was a test done on search engine land. They tested Google brought JavaScripts and they learned that almost most of it, though Google says can be crawled, it cannot be crawled. And so let's say what's the problem we have. The problem is, imagine a scene, you are embarking on a first movement of a website SEO. So when I have to do an SEO audit, I'm going to do, basically what you do is how your web page is going to look to a Google is, you have a web developer toolbar, you just disable the JavaScripts and reload them. And that's where if you see how the site, so you would see all the problems, that is what the browser or that is what the crawler is going to see. And that's where the interesting part is. So this is how it goes. Please wait for the site to load, and when you hope to use something, this is what it comes with JavaScript disabled, and this is what you are hoping it would show. So this is how it's built, and that is what the crawler is. Another example, or you come across something like this, questions, feedback, and just a blank page, and when you are hoping something like this. That's another example. Another example, so you get a page like this. This is all with JavaScript, of course, block. And when all you really wanted to see was this. So you see how these pages are not built for search. And finally, if you go to another website of this, these are all live examples. When you are expecting to see, you see a blank page. That becomes a problem. So this is what the search engine sees, and this is what don't match with what we see. So that is what we have if the JavaScript is disabled, and that is what exactly search engine also sees when they come to our website, and this is what we should have shown. So that becomes a problem, which we have. The main content is gone, so you see because there is no content when Googlebot comes to the page, so how would it rank? That becomes a problem. Navigation is gone, so Google cannot crawl all the pages. That becomes the problem. So this is an example of a web app requires input. So now the search engine can't search therefore. It can just crawl. What the crawler does is follows links and crawl links to links. Now here the problem is that the search engine cannot crawl your web. So the problem is search can't get the content on their own. They can't search. Another example, what I do with this, the search engines will come and say, what am I supposed to do? I can't go beyond page 1. Most of it is locked. Let's go there. This is another way when you are typing something, and then that's where something keeps on coming. You are actually choosing a place, you are then choosing which dates, for example, and there is no way search engine right now can do that. They cannot. They are not built that way. They don't know what to search, and I don't think in the future they would know what to search in your website. So that's something which again is a problem. Not so good for navigation. So this is what is happening with this page. Often as a problem, the main problem with the search is that the crawler it's not able to find all the pages on your website. That becomes a problem. Some pages are indexed, and sometimes some order rankings fall because Google can't crawl those website pages. So even if you are building links to those pages, but internally Google cannot see a link to that page, that's not going to be a value. So we currently working for a website based in there is a booking search engine of a hotel, and the client has a similar problem. The website cannot be crawled properly. So they have, even before we were able to fix the English language, they went ahead and launched 10 more languages. So we went back and said that you can't even have an English language crawled. Why would you launch all 10 languages and the same problem 10x? So say we think their logic was, we think that the English is too much of a competition, with other languages it's not, so we can rank well for those competition, for those languages. So we go back and said, okay, but if your English is not fixed, how would you rank for them? And they have no answer for that. But what they have done is gone ahead and built a website with at least almost 6 million pages, and a traffic of monthly traffic of almost 3,000. And they continue adding more languages, putting more people into it, and we continue arguing, why are you doing this? Why can't you just have it with 2 languages? Because your site has a major crawler problem. And these are the problems which we are talking about, which practically happens. So even if these pages are not dynamic, they cannot be crawled because some or the other way developer has done something or the other wrong. So now what can you do about it? The good thing is Google few days back has updated had done a major update about their tutorials. So had the webmaster tutorials and all the developer tutorials, they have upgraded, made it very user friendly, so you could read all about this, how you can make it, follow the best practices which Google talks about. And this is an HTML server, so this is the best practice for now. I'll just read it out for you. Crawler maps from pretty URLs to ugly URLs, so they have crawler request the ugly URL, and then it goes to the server maps the ugly URLs to pretty URLs. So for example, if the URL, just an example, is example.com page query escape, and then it goes to the pretty URL example.com query key is equal to value, and the server creates HTML snapshot for this URL. It might look a little bit technical, but there are tools available which will do just this for you. And so this is how you can have the web page crawl. This is something which works right now for these type of pages. And of course, so how does this affect SEO? Is obviously obvious, which I talked about. So when your website is heavily JS dependent website, it's really important for us to understand how search engine can crawl. Now Google and Bing last year announced that they can crawl those websites if the JS has escape fragments, which again is, I'm not going too much into technicalities, but these are the segments which you could do. This is what Google tells. You can use these type of codes, and yes, you can be crawled. The website can be crawled. And most of the problem which we have is the hashtags are used. So you see, sometimes you go on a web page, the page would URL won't change, just the hashtag. But at the end of the day, Google can't crawl them. So if you have an Angular JS you are using, and your head would use like this, you could use, this is only the matter which we have, you could use either C to stray away or you can't, so then this is another way of doing it. And then there are other ways to do this, so you make sure none of your website pages are blocked. So what typically happens is sometimes when you go back, you see that some of the pages, some of the time Google your developer would block some of the pages. For example, somebody would say, I don't want my JavaScript to be crawled. So they would put a block them in the robots. That's not a good advice anymore. We used to do it, but then Google started issuing warnings for that your website cannot be crawled properly because your website has a rendering problem. So a lot of messages were sent, and then it came to know that you can no longer block JavaScript. We thought Google won't crawl JavaScript. Why give them extra pages to crawl which has no user value? Just adds up. So that's where it doesn't work. You have to have those pages working. And just going to go back to, so make sure no files are blocked. So you go to a Google Webmaster Tool, and you could see there a robot.txt tool. So how many of you people are aware about Google Search Console or Google Webmaster Tool? Okay, majority of you are. If some of you people are not using it, I would highly recommend just like Google Webmaster Tools. It's simple, intuitive. Google has made it very user friendly for you to understand whatever problem your website is, and if you have signed up, any problem you have, they would send it to you back. So it tells us what is blocked. Then if I go forward, this is just an example of the same page where we are talking about the URL where there is just a search box. Now you could, if you have a similar website which just have a search box, it becomes important you create browsable pathways. So for example, you could say we searched, I'll just share what kind of you could have a browser pathway just like popular searches. These are something of this you could have. Then you could have browser pathways where when somebody goes from a specific Seattle, let's say if I click on Seattle, this is where I land, this is a browser pathway. Then if I go, there is another browser pathway which you could see there. So these are the links which are interlinking and clicking. So instead of building one page which is just loading, you have related page, related sections. Amazon does a good job with that. So Amazon has one of the world's best SEO work on their website. That's why you would see them ranking very well in search whenever you search for any product. So they have a very good example of doing all this the way this is talked about. And of course, what about the not so popular cities? You can even have those not so popular cities crawlable. So let's say if I have a 50 crawlable, I cannot put, let's say if in India I'm marketing it for 100 cities, I can't put 100 links on my home page. So the second good way to do it is put them in your XML site. Help search engine find those pages. So there are, let's say, 20 popular searches or places on your home page, but rest could be in your XML sitemap. So that's something you guys can do. But that's important. But now the important thing is here, this is not a replacement for internal linking. So you just can't have pages in the XML and expect Google to do it. Just like I was talking about this client, they have almost, each language has almost 6 lakh of pages, and they are all in XML. But that doesn't help you if they are not internal. So that becomes very, very important that you do internal linking someplace, not even from the home page, but somewhere from inside the pages. So the more pages get crawled, the more pages gets indexed, and the more traffic you get. That's simple. That's simple how we need to ensure that our website is crawled well. Golden rule, I'm now going to share about some of the common problems. One file piece for a specific content. So for example, I shouldn't have same product or same page. I should not be able to have a different path. So I should not have website.com/categories/product and website.com/product. These are, and both open same. So that is the major problem which happens. You cannot have same fun file paths and different paths for that. Duplicate, manifold, sorting, category, non-existing, framed content, that's what we normally have, that becomes a problem. Assume that anything in DOM is technically accessible to modern search, so even if you are using it a DOM, so you should have, again, disable JavaScript, see, can that be crawled, can that be visible? Important thing here, robot.txt only works internally. So, however, robot.txt disallowed does not guarantee that page will not appear in results. So, let's say I am asking in my robot to block a page, but what if somebody links to that page? Google is saying I'm not going to internally follow it, but the problem is if somebody links to it, Google will follow. That's where it becomes important that if you really don't want a page to be crawled, you should put it in a meta tag, a no index meta tag, X robot tag, which could use, and that way the page will not be crawled and not be seen in search. So if you really want, so a typical, let's say I have a page which has a problem, which has a low value content, or let's say I have a page which I know has a duplicate content, I don't have a bandwidth to rewrite that content. So a typical solution would be block that. Now blocking in a robot is not going to help. Blocking, this is how it's going to help. Robot.txt will work, not only that way. Another example, don't block with both robots and meta robots together. That's not something is recommended. You either use the robots or you either block it with the meta. Okay, best to block with, so the best way is to block with meta robots, and you go to Google Webmaster Tools, and there is an option where you could remove those URLs from being crawled. But however, it renews every 6 months. So whatever you remove now, the directive in Google Webmaster Tools just remains for 6 months. You have to remember, if you are removing a page, you probably have to revisit every 6 months too. And of course, you could use X robot tag is in document head. So for example, let's say sometimes we have a product manual on website, and we also have it in a PDF. What you don't want PDF to be crawled because it's going to create a duplicate. So that's where you could have an X robot tag and say, I don't want my PDF or a specific document to be crawled. So that's something you can do. Again, do not print session IDs parameter. For some time a typical developer would do file path, they would hard code the session IDs. That's not something which we would recommend. That's something which actually creates another problem for the website. And when you have to pass session info, it's use cookies, because with cookies, once your session ends, the whole thing gets killed, and you won't get more user URLs crawled. I hope I'm not getting very technical, though I am. So, but are you guys getting it? Yes. So I would go a little easy on the other section, but it's important because it's supposed to be technical, so I'm supposed to do this. So in no other alternative blocks parameters by Google. So there is an option where you could go to Google Webmaster Tool and you can block parameters pages, but it's not very effective. So Google itself says they will see, but it's not something very effective that you can block.